Hello everyone, welcome to the Fast and the Curious and our Chinese Grand Prix debrief. Now it's only race 2 of the season, but it's never too early for this episode was recorded before ... bit that we put at the start of the podcast. So this episode was recorded before loads of people got disqualified. So yeah, Lewis Hamilton disqualified from the Chinese Grand Prix. One of the skid blocks on his car was found to be less than the required thickness. A disaster of a result for Ferrari because Charles Leclerc has also been disqualified, as has Alpine's Pierre Gasly. Explaining the disqualifications, Ferrari said Charles Leclerc's high tyre wear due to his one-stop strategy has caused a weight breach, while they misjudged the consumption by a small margin in regard to Lewis Hamilton's skid wear. So there you go. Lots of disqualifications. Not a good day for Ferrari or Alpine's Pierre Gasly. He hadn't scored any points anyway, so he won't be too devastated. But regardless, the rest of this episode still stands. Hopefully. Please enjoy the rest of this scheduled edition of The Fast and the Curious. Liam Lawson needs to improve, and fast.
I think Red Bull really need to take a look at themselves and work out what it is that they actually want and how they deal with this. Because what is it that they do with that second seat? No one leaves that second seat looking good. No one. They leave with no confidence. Pierre Gasly had to rebuild his career. Alex Albon had to rebuild his career. And now they've brought in Liam Lawson, like a young rookie who clearly isn't going to thrive straight away in those positions. So what are they doing? Welcome back to The Fast and the Curious, the show that takes you inside the world of Formula One. We speak to the drivers, we keep an eye on all of the biggest news, like Ferrari's interesting new merch. If you don't know what I'm talking about, have a listen to the last episode, because Greg especially absolutely loves it. And we also pick apart the biggest moments of the season. Today, we've of course got the Chinese Grand Prix to get into. I'm Betty Glover, who incidentally predicted the whole podium correctly in order last time out. So thank you very much.
Nailed it, mate. Nailed it.
If anyone wants the lottery numbers, do let me know. Slide into my DMs. I can try my best. And we're joined by our island boy, Christian Hewgill, who's fresh from his retreat. Do you feel relaxed and ready to go, Christian? Because I know, one Grand Prix was really hard on you. You needed that time to just compose yourself, relax, regain your energy.
I heard this. I did listen to the episode. It was more that if I've gone all that way, I might as well stay a bit longer. Do you know what I mean? Rather than encouraging me of slacking off. How very dare you? Do I feel relaxed? No, is the honest answer. I don't. I got back early hours of yesterday, so Saturday, and jet lag has hit me hard, and I was wide awake at 4 o'clock this morning, being like, can't even watch the race because it's not on yet. So
timings didn't work out for you, did it?
No. I would have earlier one would have been great. So now I feel a bit shattered. But anyway, it is lovely to be back. We've got a lot to get through today. We will obviously be dissecting the Chinese Grand Prix. You can tell it's going to be one of those for me today because I'm struggling with talking. I'm just not a functioning adult. So yes, we'll be dissecting the Chinese Grand Prix. We'll also, as promised at the start of our preview episode, talk about the legendary Eddie Jordan, who the Formula One world has been paying tribute to this weekend. And appropriately given we'll be talking about Eddie, we're giving away tickets to one of the loudest, most fun and most flamboyant races on the F1 calendar, the Miami Grand Prix. Someone, by the end of this episode, will have won our massive competition, which is very exciting, isn't it, Betty? And it's a great day to be taking me on in a quiz because, as I said, I am not functioning well as a human.
Yeah, you haven't had a lot of sleep. Maybe your brain's going to be a little bit slower. Those
without question. Like, without question. There was a point you text me in the race being like, poor Yuki. And I was like, why poor Yuki? As his front wing had literally just come off. I was like, so that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Anyway, yeah.
Poor Yuki. There's no Greg this week. He is having a very well-deserved rest following a very busy week on the road for Radio 1, helping Jamie Lang raise more than £2 million for comic relief, which is very impressive. almost as impressive as Oscar Piastri, bouncing back from that disappointment in Australia with a brilliant drive. I loved it. What did you love about it, Christian?
I was never worried for Oscar, but when he was in the pen post-race in Australia, he looked the saddest and most despondent I think I've ever seen him look after a Grand Prix in his albeit quite short F1 career. The hype around McLaren, the hype around him coming into the race, I saw for myself, the fact that he took over Australia, took over the event, and it all went wrong. So to recover from that, but right from minute one, in first practice this weekend, just look on it straight away. Okay, I put that behind me. I'm done. I said on Twitter over the weekend, his mental strength is his superpower. I just think to bounce back from that, Betty, so impressive. I've been so impressed by Oscar Piastri this weekend. A fantastic, not just race for him, but weekends. Just one of those weekends where you're looking for weekends like this. I always say this, if you're going to be a title contender, you need these weekends where you come in and from Friday practice one, be like, bam, I'm comfortable, I'm happy, here I am, I'm having a lovely time, I love my job, I'm going to do it. And he just looked like that all weekend. It was brilliant.
Never had any doubt over Oscar, though, because he's just such a cool, calm, collected individual. Still so young, which we always go on about, but he just seems to have that mentality. And I think a lot of people know that we're going to be seeing a lot more from him sort of further down the line, aren't we? We're going to be celebrating loads of Grand Prix wins in the future. But do you think if Lando didn't have his sort of brake issues, do you think it would have been a bit closer between those two? It would have been a bit more nervy?
I do actually, yeah, I really do, because similar to how we saw with at one point Lando was leading in Australia and Oscar looked like he was about to challenge, there was a moment this weekend, or this today I should say, in the race where it looked like Lando had the pace, and then the brake issues came on, which we'll get onto. So I'm not worried for Lando. Yes, Oscar came in and looks the more comfortable McLaren, but there will definitely be weekends where Lando, like last weekend, just looks the most comfortable of the two McLarens. So those two will ebb and flow throughout the season. But as Lando said in his post-race interview with Rachel Brooks on Sky, the race started to feel more comfortable for him towards the end. So you could see that. But just, we'll talk about those brake issues, but just to go back to Oscar briefly, again, I mentioned the post-race coverage on Sky. Really interesting that Andrea Stella, the team principal, said to Sky that Oscar had one of his toughest races in China last year. And I thought that's really interesting. So I did a little bit of digging. Oscar finished 40 seconds behind Lando in China last year. Oscar was P8, Lando was P2. And there was the odd race last year where just Oscar looked nowhere near Lando's pace. I talked in the off-season about expecting Oscar to level up over the winter, like he did from his first season into his second, now into his third. That is a concrete example. F1's all about data of where you can sort of demonstratively say, this is Oscar improving. So to have such a tricky China in 2024 and coming in 2025, when it's even more difficult with the track being resurfaced, which again we'll get onto, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. This is one of those performances why I believe, and what summarises why I believe Oscar will be in a championship battle this season.
100%. Last week, you said McLaren were the quickest car, but not by far. A lot of people were saying this race in China is actually the one that will be a clear marker because it's going to be a dry race, not as dramatic. All sorts was going on in Australia. So do you still stand by your little rhyme?
It was more Greg's rhyme, but I do for now, yes. I think Max in the Red Bull and both Ferraris and George in the Mercedes, none of them are as far behind the McLarens as the McLarens were as far behind the Red Bulls in the early stages last year. And then obviously McLaren bought that massive upgrade for Miami and caught up. So I think, yeah, they have got a comfortable... I mean, listen, 11 seconds. George was 11 seconds behind Oscar. And, you know, Lando was 9 seconds behind Oscar, but he'd been way closer were it not for the brake problem. So, yes, clearly they've got a comfortable advantage at the moment. But take us back to round 2 last year, Saudi Arabia, and let's look at the Red Bull advantage. Charles Leclerc, the lead non-Red Bull, finished 18 seconds behind Max in round 2 last year, and Ferrari won races last year. Oscar, the lead McLaren, was 32 seconds behind, and McLaren won the Constructors' Championship. So all of a sudden, that 11-second gap, if you're following my numbers here, doesn't look quite as dominant as maybe it appears. Basically, what I'm saying with some numbers to back it up is McLaren are fairly comfortably quickest at the moment, but they can't rest on their laurels. I don't think it's enough to simply say, for example, George said at the start of the weekend, McLaren have got more of an advantage than Red Bull ever had when they were dominant. I don't think that's true. I think Red Bull are quickest. It falls with such a habit. I think Red Bull are the quickest. I think McLaren are the quickest for now, but don't expect them to breeze this championship. Maybe they will. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just can't see them breezing it personally.
They just look so sort of comfortable, bar the brake issues at the front.
Yeah, they do, but just remember how long the season is. That's the thing, Betty. Just remember how long it is, and that's why I can't see it being a McLaren complete walkover, but maybe I'll be proved wrong.
Curious George. I think George did so well, by the way. I was so impressed with him. And also, I noticed afterwards he said that it was one of his best performances in Formula One. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, why not? Why not? I think George has been really impressive so far this season. And I actually think his impressing me carries back from into last season, because 2023 wasn't a great season for George. Too many mistakes. Like, he looked like he lagged behind Lewis, whereas last year that just didn't look the case. And George has sort of got everything back on track, and already after 2 races, he just looks every inch the Mercedes team leader. And there was a moment in qualifying that really impressed me, where he just said over the team radio, guys, just chill. Just chill, when they were sort of saying, George, we need this run. And they didn't need that run in order to get through. George looks like he's leading that Mercedes team really, really well. So I'm really impressed with George, full stop, Betty, to be honest with you, this season. I think he's doing a really good job.
Do you reckon George can sort of come in between this title battle between the 2 McLarens? Do you reckon anyone else could get involved?
Quite possibly, because I mentioned this on the pre-season preview with Karun. We did a few weeks back, but this is why I think Max isn't out the title battle. You can never write off Max Verstappen. Look at today, the way he took his time during the race, but eventually plucked off the Ferraris. Fernando Alonso in 2012, and there will be other examples of this, by the way, not least Nico Rosberg, but Fernando Alonso in 2012 finished just 3 points behind the championship winner, Sebastian Vettel. Fernando only won 3 races all season, but he was so consistent with picking up podiums. I just think at some point, and there's reliability problems. Look at Lando's brakes. There are the fact that I'm sure at some point in the season, a Lando-Oscar battle will cost them some points. I think if you're someone like George, it seems to me that the Mercedes is probably the second quickest car based on the first 2 Grand Prix. So if you're someone like George, you can never write off Max. I'm thinking if I'm them, I need to pick up these seconds, these thirds, these fourths, and just be consistent. And if you can do that, I think you could stay in a title battle this year. I really do, particularly if, as I just said earlier, Betty, upgrades start to come. So yeah, why not? Why not?
I think it was Charles Leclerc that sort of halfway through that race said on the radio, like, wow, look at Mercedes. They look like they're so comfortable. They look like they're having a great time. He added a little bit of commentary.
Yeah, he did. And he commented on how quick they were on the straights. And I suspect that's because at that particular point in the race, they were able to generate more grip coming out of the corners on this slippy surface. And therefore, if you can accelerate earlier coming out of the corner, your tyres grip up after the corner, you get your foot on the gas earlier, you reach a higher top speed at the end of the straights. I suspect that had something to do with it. Maybe the Mercedes engine also was just a bit more powerful, who knows. But I think George Russell, Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc all driving well enough to fight for a world championship. See also Max Verstappen. Obviously, Liam Lawson in the other Red Bull isn't. We'll come on to that. Kimi Antonelli, very encouraging start, but isn't quite there yet. But you wouldn't expect him to be at this age, this early on. But yeah, if there's very little between the Ferraris. We saw that again. Lewis looked more comfortable all weekend. Charles looked a bit more comfortable in the race, but very little between the two. If those teams can edge forward in development, and of course that'll be tricky between balancing development for the new rule changes in 26, any of them could find themselves in the title hunt with some consistency.
Being a Ferrari fan must be like being on an absolute roller coaster, because they had a nightmare in Australia. You've then got Hamilton winning the sprint. It's elation, amazing. And then you go into this Grand Prix and it's a bit like, oh.
It's really interesting because one of the rule changes for last season was that you could change your setup in between the sprint race. So when sprint's done, you have sprint qualifying, sprint race, great, sprint's done, then you can change your setup for race qualifying and sort of the weekend starts again. And what we've seen with that is sprint race weekends become less predictable. So Ferrari in the sprint looked very, very comfortable, but then teams were able to make setup changes and all of a sudden teams catch up for the main race using what they've learned in the sprint. So yeah, listen, Ferrari aren't too far off. I think the pecking order is McLaren quickest car, then I think it's probably George in the Mercedes, the two Ferraris there or thereabouts, and Max you just can't rule out. It's so close between those teams. It's really close. It's fascinating.
It is. On my radio radar, so last weekend...
radio radar. I enjoyed that. Can we have Betty's radio radar as a thing? We could make a jingle.
Radio radar. So last week, the thing that obviously stood out was Charles Leclerc and his engineer talking about the water. Remember the water in the sea?
Oh, of course, remember the water.
Must be the water.
That'll be the water. Yeah, that'll be the water.
Today on my radio radar, I've got Yuki Tsunoda. And I loved this from him because it was just pure sass. It was pure Yuki. It's what we love about him. He goes, I want to use more front. They reply, his engineer replies, we don't want to. Yuki goes, well, I want to. And they went, okay, do what you need to do.
Oh, do what you like then. Yeah, you do you, love.
Off you go, Yuki, do whatever.
Also on Radio Radar, I enjoyed last weekend Lewis Hamilton going, stop talking to me. You're rambling on in my ear. You're saying far too much. And today he's going, hello? Well, you're not giving me anywhere near as much information as I need.
guys, where are you? Where's the information? And then they replied with a little bit of information. And Hamilton went, yeah, you've already said that.
Producer Jimmy's just texted out the Fast and Curious WhatsApp group saying we like Radio Radar. We've made it Radio Radar's a new feature. That's it. Sold. Really like that. You. Also, it's not Radio Radar, but while we're on things we've learnt, one of my favourite things of the weekend was that it's apparently International Bear Day.
Yes. And congratulations to all the bears. Give the bears a shout out.
Yeah, and everyone's saying this about Ollie Behrman. But then my favourite thing during this was, again, I was up super early, so I saw like the vast majority of Sky's pre-race coverage, was Crofty, when saying this, going, it's International Bear Day, including giant pandas. the clarification from Crofty.
Great.
Including giant pandas. It's important to be accurate in Formula One. So, yeah, that's another thing we learned from Crofty this weekend. So, yeah, happy International Bear Day. Including giant pandas, everyone.
Well, you can't forget about the giant pandas.
Can't forget.
Because, they're
you've long said
important
that.
bears. Important
You've
bears.
long said that, haven't you? You've long said you can't forget about the giant pandas.
I really have. We have asked for everyone to send in their questions on Instagram. So if you're listening, always get in touch with us. We are on every single social media outlet that you could possibly think of. Send them anytime. We're Fast Curious Pod on the socials. Christian, we did get this question in for you. Why was Charles allowed to carry on despite the busted front wing, which looked like it sort of helped him?
You're confused, I think.
Yeah, is that someone called Christian?
What's confused Betty is
Sorry.
someone's called Christian has sent in a message asking Christian a question. So Christian, hi, I'm Christian. Thanks for your question, Christian. I knew that had caught you out. Oh, and now Betty's just dropped her headphones. It's all gone terribly wrong. You all right, dear? You okay?
I'm out.
You okay? You back?
Hold on.
Oh, box. Betty's unplugged her headphones here. This is staying in the edit. This is great. You all right, dear? You back?
Sorry, got a bit excited.
Christian's thrown you right off course here, hasn't he?
Christian, right, sorry. Hello, Christian. Thank you for sending in your question for Christian. Can you see why I got confused?
Oh, I can. Anyway, I'll answer Christian's question. Why was Charles allowed to carry on despite the busted front wing? If you pick up damage during the race, sometimes you can be shown one of the lesser spotted flags in Formula One, the black flag with the orange disc in the middle of it, the orange circle. That means the FIA think your car is too dangerous and therefore you need to pit in. However, if you get damage and the clever people at the team can go onto the FIA and say, listen, here's pictures, here's data to suggest that this isn't going to trail oil or trail bits of carbon fibre into the circuit. Don't worry, guys, it's not unsafe. There's nothing to say that you have to stop if you've got damage. It's only if you are dangerous. Now, so that was why Charles was allowed to carry on, Christian, because it wasn't going to fall off. It wasn't dangerous. As for why you should, aerodynamically speaking, if you have a chunk of your wing missing, be slower. And Charles just wasn't. I can't explain that.
It looked like it was like almost about to scrape the track.
Yeah.
Like
So clearly we don't need front wing end plates. Just get rid of them.
Well, did you watch the cool down room with the drive? You know, with the three in there talking, and George Russell was watching the start, and he was like, "Oh my God, Charles has done so well with that hanging off." Like they were, and then he was like, "Oh, looks like it's clearly worked. Maybe he did it on purpose. Maybe that's it."
Brilliant effort.
Ella, Amanda, Lizzie, and quite a lot more people said, please can you explain why Lando was struggling with the brakes and what a long brake pedal means?
The best way I think I can explain this one is if you get into a hire car and it's not the car you're used to driving and the brake feels funny.
Yes.
It's a bit like that. All of a sudden during the race, if you imagine there is a distance between putting your foot down and the pedal reaching the end of that putting foot down process, that distance is the amount that you are used to having for the car to slow down. So let's say, for example, I need to move my foot 5 centimeters forward for the car to stop, and I'm used to that. If you've got a problem with your brake pedal, you have what's called a long brake pedal, because all of a sudden it will take a longer distance for the car to stop. And it's extremely disconcerting as a racing driver to put your foot down. Hang on, why is this going further forward than it should do, this brake pedal? And crucially, why the bloody hell am I not stopping? And what McLaren was saying on there is, look, the brakes aren't failing. There are still brakes, but the pedal is longer. And that is so tricky because it makes you as a driver think, well, do I have to brake harder? Well, if you brake too hard, you can lock your tyres and spin. Do I have to adjust my braking points because it's going to take a longer period of time to stop the car? That is so difficult to manage at the best of times, let alone on a weekend where track grip is really tricky. Remember, Betty, when I was on the island and I said about the race, the track being resurfaced?
Yeah.
That proved to be an even more challenging and tricky proposition than I expected because, as I said on the island, when you resurface a track, when you relay a track, it makes it considerably more unpredictable and it ate the tyres up more than the teams were expecting. So take that, plus a brake challenge. Lando did so well to nurse that car home. So that's what a long brake pedal means.
Yeah, he had to manage that, didn't he? And he also said that if sort of they had one extra lap, George Russell would have definitely overtaken him because he wouldn't have been able to have sustained that.
And it seemed like it was getting worse as well. So extremely well done to Lando. But this is this title battle on another day, that's costing Lando second place and he's retiring. And that's 18 points down the drain. That's why every position is so important in this title battle when it's going to be as close as it is. So yeah, really well done, Lando. That was very, very impressive. And who knows, without that, he might well have challenged Oscar for that win.
Yeah, could have been a nightmare scenario, couldn't it? If he didn't finish on the podium for McLaren. Steph asked this question, and I'm really pleased that she has done this because I wanted to talk about this. How long do you think Lawson will last at Red Bull?
Well, not long. Not long at all at this rate. And Red Bull aren't really denying this. If you look at what Christian Horner and Helmut Marko are saying, Christian Horner's the team principal, Helmut Marko is the sort of guy at Red Bull who has the driver decisions in his hands, and he's very old school in his approach. listen, there's a couple of reasons why it won't be long. That car is not easy to drive. This is the worst Red Bull we've seen in years. It is, I think, slower because it's more difficult to drive than the Mercedes and the Ferrari. But Max Verstappen, one of his big strengths as a driver is his ability to control diva-ish cars, and we're seeing that shine through. I don't think there's anyone else on the grid that would be able to. I'm saying he's still in the title battle. That's because he's superhuman. I don't think anyone else on that grid puts that car in a title battle other than Max. That said, this car is not that bad. Liam, is qualifying last. Liam finished this race in 15th, and that's only really because Hülkenberg and Tsunoda had problems. Liam on another day could have finished this race plumb last. In his worst nightmares, he would never have expected it to be this bad. And in Red Bull, Red Bull wanted to keep Sergio Perez for a couple of reasons. He was very popular. He did do well in that seat in the early days of him being in it, and he was commercially very lucrative. In sponsorship and in merch sales, he brought in a lot of money. Lawson does not have that advantage in his corner. Red Bull had Checo on a contract for this season and very expensively in the off-season paid him off, like McLaren did with Ricciardo, where they effectively paid Ricciardo for a year to bring in Piastri. That was a masterstroke. This, it is worse. It is Liam is doing worse than Checo did. That simply cannot carry on, particularly when, let's be honest, the other big contender for that seat, Yuki Tsunoda, all right, it went wrong in the race today. It's not really through any fault of his own. A dodgy strategy from RB, struggling with the tyres a little bit more than they expected to. And then the front wing failure. Yuki's had an impressive start to the season. Liam Lawson needs to improve, and fast.
I think Red Bull really need to take a look at themselves and work out what it is that they actually want and how they deal with this. Because what is it that they do with that second seat? No one leaves that second seat looking good. No one. They leave with no confidence. Pierre Gasly had to rebuild his career. Alex Albon had to rebuild his career. They both went away and ended up doing better. They gave Perez some time, like more time than those two, to be fair, didn't they? But he left absolutely frazzled, with no confidence, looked broken by the end. And now they've brought in Liam Lawson, like a young rookie who clearly isn't going to thrive straight away in those positions. So what are they doing? Because
a couple of things here. Again, on Bernie Collins, friend of the podcast, made a brilliant point on Sky that Mercedes gave Kimi Antonelli as much time as they were allowed to give him in old cars.
That's a good point.
When Red Bull haven't done that. And Bernie quite outspokenly says she doesn't understand why Red Bull didn't do that. Second thing is, I don't think, as you say, Betty, given all the struggles of that seat, I still don't. I think Liam Lawson is capable of being in that seat long term. I think he's a real talent. But for his career management, I think he should have had a full season in an RB. And I think Red Bull go, well, yeah, but we chucked Max in. Yeah, but Max is a generational talent. And he's one of, if not the greatest F1 driver who's ever raced. It's up there for me between him and Lewis. So it's a tricky one. It's a really tricky one.
I hope that Liam Lawson has the resilience to be able to bounce back from this.
It's hard because he had such self-belief. He's a confident character. And also, Liam gets quite a lot of stick. I've interviewed Liam several times, spent time with him, quite long-form interviews. He's a good guy. I like Liam Lawson. He's quite bolshy in his interviews sometimes. But listen, he's a good guy. He's a nice guy. So it's really hard to watch. Really feel sorry for him. He's not this panto villain a lot of people make him out to be. So I hope he can pull it off. But he's self-confident, Betty. He's got so much confidence in his own ability. So he will not have expected it to go this bad, and that's hard.
It's clear, though, isn't it, really? Sign someone that's either Verstappen's level, that can back him up, that can drive that car, and then you're going to have a better
there's no one else on
chance
the grid that's... Yeah, but there's no one else on the grid that's Verstappen's level.
But they could have gone, I don't know, Carlos Sainz.
So, yeah, I know what you mean. They could have gone.
So do you go for someone that's just a little, can match Verstappen a little bit more? Obviously not going to be as good as Verstappen, but someone that can drive the car well, and therefore you're going to have a better chance of winning constructors.
Me and Karun agreed with this on the pre-season preview. That's exactly what I'd have done. I'd have signed Sainz.
Or you leave somebody in that car, that second car, and you give them years to sort of bed in and help them, and they're just that second person. Something that I heard, though, Christian, that's really worried me, from Andrew Benson, and I don't know what you think about this, but he said that he reckons Red Bull are going to get rid of Liam Lawson soon and bring in Isaac Hadjar. And I just thought, no, don't you dare. Don't you dare do that to Isaac Hadjar.
How many times do you want to make the same mistake? I mean, that, and also, good Lord, how do you explain that to Yuki? I mean...
I know. Another question that I actually had, whilst we're talking about Red Bull, I've heard a lot of people say that the Red Bull is really pointy, and that's what Max Verstappen really likes. And so obviously we know that the Red Bull sort of made for Max Verstappen. What does it mean when the front is really pointy?
It's effectively, again, let's draw, like earlier, comparisons to driving your car. You know, when you turn the steering wheel, you get used to its characteristics in your own head, and you know how much it will turn. But imagine if you went up to a roundabout and you're going to turn left, and all of a sudden it darted vastly far to the left, and you're like, whoa, I didn't mean that far left. That's effectively what Red Bull have got here. They've got a car that it's literally what it says on the tin. It is pointy. It really sort of goes very harshly into corners, and because of that becomes very difficult to keep the rears glued to the track. So because it's so harsh on its turning in, it becomes very hard to stop the car kicking out, and you lose grip. Now, Max is really, really good at driving this sort of car. It's how the Red Bulls always sort of behave, because Max has always been the only sort of person that can drive it. So if you think of the feedback he gives the team, it's always, he's the only one that's ever been quick. So that's just the way the natural sort of order of things has gone at Red Bull. It's not quite as simple as to say, oh, well, Red Bull only design a car for Max. They don't, because that's counterproductive. But what they do is have one driver who has one very unique driving style that's been there for so long, and he's the only one that's consistently given feedback when others are struggling. So it just ends up that way. So it's pointy because it's not smooth. It's sort of darting into corners more than you'd want it to be. It's oversteery. It's a hard thing to get hold of. And I don't doubt, by the way, if you put most of the grid in that car, particularly Yuki Tsunoda, they'd be struggling. They might be struggling to get into the points, but Liam can't be this far off. It's not that bad.
I love Yuki, but there is a reason why Red Bull probably haven't gone for it. They would have gone for him by now.
I don't listen. I've said this before. I'm not sure he's the long-term answer in terms of his temperament. I don't think he's a cool customer as you need to be to fight in a championship battle. But also, I don't think he was like he didn't comprehensively in terms of race pace. Qualifying he tends to, but he doesn't comprehensively thrash those people he's been with at Red Bull. At AlphaTauri, at RB, whatever the hell they're called. So I'm still not sorry, Yuki fans. I know this has got an unpopular opinion. I'm still not convinced he's the answer long term. But frankly, if Liam Lawson deserves a go, Yuki does too. So it's a difficult one.
Every race debrief, you like to pick a story, don't you, that might have gone a little bit under the radar over the course of the weekend. We like to call it Christian's cubby hole. So, Christian, what is in your cubby hole today?
The team Haas are in my cubby hole. I mean, firstly, Ollie, the whole team.
It's a big old cubby hole.
Oh, it's a big old hole. Big old hole. Really is. Good morning. Anyway,
God.
You had a scrappy race for Bortoletto. You had Doohan not being quite on Gasly's pace this weekend. Hadjar and Doohan scrapping didn't really help either of them, although it was very entertaining to watch. I've already mentioned Antonelli's looking solid, but the rookie that stood out was Ollie Behrman. Fantastic overtaking from him. He was brilliant this weekend. He looked much better all weekend. And again, like I said with Oscar, really tricky weekend in Australia. And I did say in Australia, I suspected it was just a bad weekend for Ollie. Like any driver can have a bad weekend, because we saw how well he could do when he deputised last year. And that Australian race was so bloody tricky for everyone. So Ollie was back on form. So well done. Really strong performance from Ollie this weekend. But Esteban Ocon, I noticed in qualifying, he qualified 11th. And that sort of went under the radar because Haas looked awful in Australia. They had a bad pre-season testing and they were lagging behind a bit. Australia, they looked awful. And I thought, hello, Ocon qualifying 11th. That's good. That's much better. And then in the race, finishing not just best of the rest, but beating Antonelli. Outstanding Grand Prix from Haas. Double points finish. That could be crucial in the Constructors. Ollie finishing 10th. Brilliant. What a turnaround from Haas this weekend. Really, really impressive. That midfield battle is going to be fascinating all year because Sauber are not as slow as we expected them to be either. And then honourable mention for Alex Albon as well. Popping up in the points again. Any race where you need to manage your tyres and run long, it's not coincidence Albon ends up in the points. Outstanding. So really well done, Alex Albon. But in particular, huge for Haas. They are all nestled snugly in my cubby hole with me.
Just before we give away some tickets to the Miami Grand Prix, which we are about to do, Christian, we just want to talk about Eddie Jordan, don't we? A real icon of Formula One. Sadly died at the age of 76. He meant a lot to you, didn't he? You posted a lot about him this past week. Tell us.
He did. He meant an awful lot to me because he was a huge figure in Formula One when I was just getting into it. So the Jordan cars of the 90s and 2000s. Eddie Jordan's an old-fashioned team boss who fought his way into the sport, having sort of ran junior series teams. And then his Jordan team in the late 90s and early 2000s. Betty, do you remember when, in the early days of the pod, we had Oscar Piastri on, and I still remember him saying that he loved seeing the Brawn cars with a yellow Go Faster stripe on them. And it's amazing how little things like that can capture your eye as a kid. And I get asked so often, what's your earliest F1 memory? And it's this. Watching on YouTube, I'm holding up a picture frame.
Oh, because so cool.
I bought I saw this on the internet and I was like, oh my God, that race is my earliest F1 memory. It's the 1998 Belgian Grand Prix. And it is Jordan having a race win with Damon Hill. They were underdogs. They were amazing. They were absolutely brilliant in that Grand Prix. It was a chaotic race. It was the first time I can remember watching the telly and being like, oh my Lord, what's going on here? Because these underdogs, these bright yellow card underdogs, were winning an absolutely chaotic race. And that was one of the main things I remember. Murray Walker's commentary of the race. I remember the yellow cars. I remember the rain. That race was such an important part of hooking me in. And then I loved Jordan. From that moment on, I was a Jordan fan because they had these bright yellow cars, sort of like Red Bull have today. They had this rock and roll attitude. Eddie was always very funny in his, team principal characters like Fred and like Gunter Steiner and like Toto and Christian Horner. Obviously, that's a thing now, but it wasn't so much of a thing back in the day. Eddie was a bit of a trailblazer in that sense. He was funny. They didn't take everyone too seriously. I just loved Jordan. So it's really sad to lose Eddie. And then also, Betty, you go into the 2010s, a sort of another decade on, when I was properly into F1 and I was at uni sort of thing. Eddie was a pundit on the BBC, and you had Jake Humphrey, David Coulthard, and Eddie Jordan, who became a real brilliant trio.
He was brilliant on the BBC.
Oh, he was so good on the BBC. And then he went on to Channel 4 as well. And Betty, this is a guy who his legacy will carry on, because not only is his Jordan team Aston Martin, he, right up until his death, was Adrian Newey's manager. He orchestrated the move for Adrian Newey to go to Aston Martin. So he was right involved in F1 right up until his death. Very sad that, cancer has taken him, which is awful. Hosted a successful podcast with David Coulthard as well. So it's so sad. A huge character of Formula One that is responsible for people like me falling in love with the sport. So Eddie Jordan, you're a legend. F1 will miss you. Thank you for everything, Eddie.
Okay, that is race weekend done and dusted. Now we've got some actual serious business to attend to. We've been building up to this moment for weeks on the Fast and the Curious, and it is finally time, guys, to give away 2 tickets to the Miami Grand Prix. or to give it its official title, which we're contractually obliged to do, it's the 2025 Formula One Crypto.com Miami Grand Prix. And that means welcome to a very special edition of Beat the Christian. We have got two contestants ready and waiting.
Unfortunately, budget means that Betty has to do her own jingles, and that's unfortunate. But well done, Betty. I think you did well there.
Thank you very much, Christian. We have got two contestants ready and waiting to take part. But before we speak to them, here is a reminder of how they got here. We asked listeners to guess the fastest lap of the Australian Grand Prix. There were hundreds of guesses. Some were absolutely miles off. One was actually 3 days late, but two were incredibly close.
Betty, can I just say at this point, as me and Jimmy went through the entries, some of them were truly awful. There was two people who guessed an hour of a lap time, not understanding the formatting, despite the fact we'd said several times. And some people, even in a dry race, would have had to have shaved about 30 seconds off the lap record. So there were some truly awful guesses, but thank you to you if you tried nonetheless.
Yeah, thank you for trying anyway. So Lando Norris got the fastest lap of the race with a time of 1:22.167. The closest guess was only 55 thousandths of a second out with the time of 1:22.222. That guess came from Kerry Marefka. Have I pronounced your surname right? Marefka.
Yeah, you got it. Exactly.
And Kerry, you are from South Carolina. Welcome to the Fast and the Curious. Firstly, I want to know, incredibly close. You were so close. Was that knowledge, or were you just going, do you know what, I'm just going to throw a load of twos at it and hope for the best?
Part sort of looking at previous years and part my lucky number, I will admit. Okay. Mostly my lucky number.
Nice. Well, it worked well for you, Kerry. It's 6:30 in the morning with you, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, it is. I've had coffee and I've had chance to skip ahead and see who won the race.
But also, Kerry, you American F1 fans are used to early mornings, right? We moan when it happens at the flyaway races, but you guys have this all year, don't you? So you're used.
Yes.
F1 fans are used to early mornings in the USA. I know that.
And, yeah, if you don't want spoilers.
And are you confident that your brain is awake?
No, but I'm here. So, Frankie, you have the edge.
Well, I'm jet lagged as hell, Kerry. So, welcome to the club. Don't worry about it. Yeah, it's a great day to take me on.
Yeah, I think you're all screwed, to be quite honest with you. And also, Kerry, you've never been to a race before, have you?
No, I have not. No, I'm so excited if it works out.
If it works out, that's the big question.
Yeah.
Okay, so you wait there. You were in pole position, but we need to meet our second contestant, sitting just behind Kerry with a guess of 1:22.476. That is just 309 thousandths out. Is Frankie. Frankie in Reading. So we've got an international battle on our hands here. It's the USA against the UK. Frankie, how are you?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Good. You are a physio for the NHS, am I right in thinking?
I am, yeah. I've done that for many years now here in Reading.
But you're also a McLaren fan?
Yes, I have always supported McLaren, even before they were really good.
And have you been to a race before?
No, never. Never had a chance.
Oh, I mean, that's nice that someone's going to. I mean, we wish we could give both of you tickets, guys, of course. But it's lovely that someone will go to a race for the first time. That's lovely. We like that.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. And what got you into F1, Frankie?
So I was trying to show off to a boy who had taken me on a few dates, and I sent him a text to say, "Oh, isn't it amazing Lewis Hamilton won today?" And he replied saying, "I don't watch the race live. I have avoided all spoilers, and I didn't know that." And I was like,
no.
"Oh, I'm really sorry." But 7 years later, we are still together. So.
Yay! Oh, brilliant!
Do you know what? Because if that had happened to Christian and someone that he was talking to spoiled the race for him, he would be like, done. Never seeing you again, never speaking to you again.
My nan did that to me once. She said, "I won't spoil it," but didn't Hamilton do well? I never spoke to her again. That's a joke, bless her. I did speak to her again many times over.
That is amazing. So will you be taking that boy to the Grand Prix if you win?
I think so. I'm not sure I'll be able to get away with not.
No, you'd have to take him, wouldn't you? You'd have to take him. Okay, are you both ready?
I think so.
Kerry's got her glasses on. She means business. This is the serious part. Welcome to Beat the Christian. Here are the rules. I'm about to ask you 5 Miami Grand Prix related questions. We want you both and Christian to write down the answers at the same time. We're then going to go through the answer. If you get the answer wrong, you get 0 points. If you get the answer correct, it's 1 point. And if you get the answer right and Christian doesn't, i.e. you beat the Christian, you get 2 points. Does everyone understand?
Yep.
The person who has the most points at the end of 5 questions will win 2 grandstand passes to the 2025 Formula One Crypto.com Miami Grand Prix. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? If things are level at the end, we've got a tiebreaker question to decide the winner as well. Here we go.
Why am I
Everyone feeling
nervous?
okay?
I really am. I mean, I'm going to the race, so sorry, but I have literally no need to be nervous, but I am. Sorry. Right. Yeah.
Some of the questions will be easier than the others. So
I hate
just
this
bear
feature
that
because
in
basically
mind.
I'll get them all wrong and people will think he's a fraud and he knows nothing about Formula One. I'll lose my job and it's all because of this stupid competition. Anyway, carry on, Betty. Go on.
Glad you're feeling confident, Christian. That's what we
Stupid
like.
game.
A massive prize at the end of this. So we've got to test your Formula One
Yes, we know.
knowledge.
Get on with it, yes.
Question number 1. Which driver has the most wins at the Miami Grand Prix? Give you a few seconds to write down your answers. Jimmy, producer Jimmy, will be adding up the scores, not me, which I think you'll be
Good for
happy
all of us,
about.
isn't it? Do I have to show answers now, do we?
Yeah, go on, Christian, show yours first.
I'm showing it to the camera thing on YouTube. Max Verstappen.
Correct. So, Kerry, what did you write down?
Max Verstappen.
Well done. Frankie?
Max Verstappen.
Okay, so well done, everyone. Easy question to start with. You're all even. Number 2. Lando Norris won his first Grand Prix in Miami last year, but what position did he start the race from? Some thinking going on there.
Okay, I've got my answer. I think, well, there was a safety car and he got lucky there, so he didn't start on pole. So I'm going to go P3 is my... I'm not very good at memory, so P3 is my guess.
Okay. I can tell you that that is incorrect.
Ooh, so was he...
So if Kerry and Frankie can beat you, they
Yeah.
will get 2 points here.
Points on offer
Kerry,
here, guys.
what was your answer?
P2.
Incorrect.
Oh.
Frankie?
P5.
Correct.
Oh,
Frankie
well done.
takes 2 points.
Deserved, Frankie. I had no recollection of that. Well done. Yeah, that I would have gone. Kerry, I was exactly the same as you. I thought in my head, oh, it's 2 or 3. So, all right,
Yeah.
great. Well done, Frankie.
Very impressive. Frankie goes into the lead with 3 points. Kerry trailing behind on 1 point. As we go into question number 3. Frankie taking some water. She's got a
Sorry, I know you spilled it.
How many races has Lando gone on to win since Miami?
God.
Kerry, head in her hands. Christian, head in his hands. So I'm going to have to rush you guys for an answer.
Okay, well,
Time is
I've
ticking.
gone for 4 on the logic. I think he won 4 Grand Prix last year. So that would be 3 last year plus Australia this year. So I've gone for 4.
I can tell you that that is correct.
Right. Okay, good.
Okay, so Kerry.
Pleased about that.
I had 5. I was off by 1 5.
Okay, and Frankie.
I went 4. I initially went
You
3.
went for 4.
And then I changed
Well
it.
done, Frankie. That's not an easy question.
Well done, Frankie.
No.
So Frankie moves up to 4 points. Kerry, you're trailing behind on 1 point. We've
Yeah.
got 2 questions.
Still in
left
it.
to
Still in
go.
it, Carrie. Still in it.
Kerry. Anything can
I'm good.
happen.
Anything can happen in
can
Formula One,
happen.
and it usually does.
Question number 4. 6 of the drivers who started the 2024 Miami Grand Prix aren't on the grid this year. Can you name 4 of them? Now, some of these drivers are technically still around as reserve drivers this season, but they don't have a permanent seat, so will be accepted as correct answers.
Okay, I can name 4 of them, so let me know when you're ready, Betty.
Just give them a couple of seconds.
I'm ready.
So just to remind everybody, Frankie is in the lead. She's leading the Grand Prix. She's leading the Fast and the Curious Grand Prix. with 4 points. Kerry started on pole position, but she's got 1 point. 2 questions left. Kerry can still win this. She can still get back into it. Okay, Christian, who have you got?
Okay, so Logan Sargent would have been driving for Williams. He's not in it. Daniel Ricciardo would have been driving for RB. Zhou would have been driving for Sauber. He's now Ferrari's reserve driver. And Checo Perez would have been driving for Red Bull.
Okay, Kerry, have you got some names?
I got Perez, Bottas, Zhou, and Danny Rick.
Correct.
Bang on.
Okay, so that gives you 1 point. Frankie?
Bottas, Sargent, Perez, and Joe.
Bottas, Sargent, correct. Okay, both of you get 1 point. Frankie, now on 5 points. Kerry, trailing on 2 points. I don't think you can win this now, Kerry, can you?
I don't think I can, but it's still fun, and that's what matters. And I'm excited for Frankie. She's got a good love story.
She does have a very good love story.
Kerry,
And
that's
also tickets.
lovely.
Get the love.
Okay, Frankie, we'll give you a proper celebration after this last question.
Yeah.
Let's
Keep
do
the
the
suspense
last
going. Keep the
question
suspense
anyway.
going. Yeah,
Let's keep
yeah.
the suspense going. Let's keep the momentum. How many corners does the Miami Grand Prix have? Christian often says that he has very, very poor corner knowledge.
Yeah, no, it's
so-
true. I'm useless with the corners. I mean, I've ran the circuit and been driven around the circuit and still don't know. So there's no hope for me, is there?
Come on then, Christian, what have you got?
111. So it's a twisty circuit. What can I say? It's a street circuit. It's not. It's a car park circuit. Yeah, it's 111. I think.
Kerry?
I have 9.
9. Okay. Frankie?
I looked this up. I think it's 19.
It is 19! Frankie, you have won tickets to the Miami Grand Prix.
Amazing.
You won 5 points. Well, you got actually more than that now, didn't you? 7 points in the end, but you won it after the 4th question. Well done, Frankie.
Thank you very much.
How do you feel?
Yeah, amazing. Very excited. It's going to be really good.
You are going to be going to your first ever Grand Prix. You've never been to a Grand Prix before.
No.
You're going to be taking your partner, Callum.
Yeah, I am.
Have you done an emergency text? How are you going to let him know? Does he
No,
know?
I'll go. No, he doesn't know. He sat downstairs. I told him he wasn't allowed to come up until I went downstairs to tell him.
Go. Hang on. Right. Go. Frankie, go get him.
Yeah, I feel like you
Go
need
get
to
him.
open the door and shout.
Wow.
Well done, Frankie. Absolutely smashed out the park, Callum.
He wasn't very far away. He was outside the door.
Ask him how he feels, Frankie.
How do you feel?
Yeah, good.
He's buzzing.
Good. Come on, guys. You should be running around the house. You're going to Miami.
We've got to go look up flights now.
And Kerry, thank you so much for trying anyway. You were a runner-up. You did very well.
Thank you. It was great fun. I really appreciate it. Frankie, if that you only want to buy one flight, I'm just a drive away. So just let me know.
Perfect.
Oh,
That is lovely. Well, thank you both so much. Frankie, we'll get those tickets over to you. What a
Thank
time to
you.
be alive.
Kerry, Frankie, thank you so much for taking part. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Kerry, thank you for being such a dignified person in defeat. That's amazing. We'll hope to speak to you again on the podcast. And Frankie, well done. We'll catch up with you after it and find out how you got on. And I'll be there. So let's say hello, Frankie.
Sounds
I'll
good.
see you there. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Well
Thank you.
Amazing for Frankie. She's going to her first ever Grand Prix, and I feel like she always had that in the bag because she was on it.
Frankie knew her stuff. That was really impressive. Yeah, I mean, basically, it was level for me and Frankie with the whole thing, except that she knew Lando had qualified P5. I had entirely forgotten that. Yeah, I mean, that was brilliant. She absolutely on it. Well done. Yeah.
I feel like she had the advantage because obviously with the time we're recording this, at about 10:30ish. So she would have woken up this morning, had time to do a little bit of Googling. Poor Kerry, she's in America.
Well,
It was
also-
6 a.m.
She'd also done a research because that was very impressive. You know, when she said, "Oh, I looked this up," that
Yeah,
it was
19.
19. And I had in my head, I was like,
You've still got it wrong.
Yeah, and genuinely, it was 18 or 19. Goodness knows which one I would have gone for. So really, really impressive, and well done to both of them. And a huge thank you to the lovely people at thecrypto.com Miami Grand Prix for giving us the tickets. You can still buy tickets now, by the way, if you want to go and do, because I think it's a brilliant race, and I'm really excited for it. But we'll get Frankie back on, and we'll talk to her afterwards, because I'll be really interested to know what she thinks of it, because I love that Grand Prix.
Yeah, and also well done for Kerry as well for getting herself on the quiz in the first place.
Yeah, they nailed it.
She did well. Before we go, thank you to everyone for your lovely messages about our chat with Charlotte Tilbury's Formula One Academy driver Chloe Chong. A top 10 finish for her, by the way, in race 1 this weekend and P11 in the second. Dorian Pan leads the championship after the first 2 rounds this weekend of the F1 Academy. It returns for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. That is in the middle of April.
Yeah, it looks like another Open Championship as well. And Dorian Pan was sort of the favourite heading into last season. Obviously, Abby Pulling won the championship. So I think Dorian will put pressure on herself this year. She'll want to take home that title at the second time of asking. So that will be an interesting one to follow. But that's it from us. We like the world of Formula One. Take a little break next week, but we'll be back the week after to preview the Japanese Grand Prix. In the meantime, there's loads on the feeds to check out and on our YouTube channel as well. Don't forget, we've already had Lando, Oscar, Carlos, Alex, Lando, Esteban and Jenson Button on the pod this season. It's not bad at all, with more drivers and big names on the way. Yeah, we've done all right there.
So we'll see you the week after next. Christian, you're going to be in Japan, aren't you? Having just got back from Australia, so pack your old bags.
I obviously, as I said, decided to stay in Australia for a bit because travelled so long. That gives me a very short turnaround, having come back to London to then go to Japan. And I reckon it's going to take me a week to get off the Australia jet lag. And then I've got to go to Japan. So goodness knows what state I'll be in, because you'll speak to me for that preview. I think it's like a 17-hour total travel time for the 2 flights I've got to get. I'll be dead. I'll be absent. So that'll be an entertaining preview, just because I don't think I'll be able to string 2 sentences together. I'm not a competent man at the best of times, let alone on that lack of sleep. But I'm very excited. Another one I've always wanted to go to. So yeah, I'll let you know what Japan's like.
Oh, that will be amazing. That will be amazing. If you're new to us, please subscribe. Send us questions, send us comments, let us know how you're doing. If you've got any questions for Christian ahead of Japan as well, get them in. But goodbye for now. Thank you so much for listening.
Goodbye.